No big update with this one. We were thinking we had the possibility of getting a Category 5 with this. The hurricane under aircraft was in there in the northeast quadrant. They did measure a wind that was about 160 miles per hour, but it wasn't really, it was a little higher elevation off the surface. So they kept it at 150 miles per hour. That's mostly just for the history books, is if it gets to a Category 5 or not. It doesn't really matter right now for any land areas because we're still about a day and a half away from when it would even get close to any of the land areas. It looks about as impressive as you would get. It's very much a textbook major hurricane. If it gets to Cat 5, I mean, this is what they look like. The well-defined wide eye, about 100 mile wide tropical storm force wind field. And if this was on top of Florida right now or on top of the islands in the Bahamas, we'd be having mass devastation and a catastrophe. But it's not there yet. And what we're hoping is that it can weaken a little bit by the time it does get to the northern Bahamas. It's also moving a little bit slower. Now we're down to about 8 miles per hour. So this is going to continue to slow down and eventually stall about 36 to 48 hours from now. And that's what's going to spare Florida, it looks like, from getting a direct hit. It doesn't look like it's going to get pushed far enough to the west to quite get there. I zoomed in here. It's kind of a memorizing picture here. It kind of looks like, something from Lord of the Rings. But this is the eye of the storm. You can see how wide the eye is, how symmetrical. All of a sudden you see little ripples around these little vorticities around the center of the eye. These are the thunderstorm tops that we're looking at that spin out from the center and rotate out. And this is, where the highest winds are. It's just amazing that nature can produce something like this. It looks beautiful when you see it like this, and it's incredible from space, about 22 to 30,000 miles above. So let me give you the forecast, what has changed, what still could change. The biggest takeaway in the last 24 hours has been to take the cone of uncertainty out of Miami, out of Tampa, out of western portions of the Panhandle. And now we've shifted it northwards, but we've included our friends in even central North Carolina, almost all the way from Charlotte to Raleigh included, Columbia to Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Savannah. Everyone here is still in the cone. The best thing that happened today was that we still continue with an offshore track. A lot of our computers are hinting that way. And there's about at least a 50% possibility that this remains what we call a fish storm. And that would be a storm that is big, bad, powerful, that stays over water and doesn't ever make landfall. Now, could the periphery of it and tropical storm force winds and high waves still rake the coast? Yes, even with a fish storm. So we still have to wait and see. We still could get a landfall in South Carolina or North Carolina. But the odds of a direct landfall in Florida, I was down to about 20%. I may even be lower than that now. And, it's going to be close enough that we don't want people to stop preparing, and you may even have to evacuate also, just in case we get another shift in the models at the last second. We don't want to be unprepared for a Category 4 storm. So that's why we have to listen to all our emergency managers. But, we'll continue to track. 2 days ago, all of these squiggly lines were going like this. West Palm Beach, Central Florida, and up like this. Now they've all shifted about 200 miles to the east. And, many of these are a fish storm. The yellow lines are Hurricane Wharf model. That's a very popular one that we watched for, many years, decent accuracy. And that's a fish storm. And then just along the North Carolina coast and maybe brushing the Outer Banks. Many of them do that same thing. Still going to be a very close call, it looks like, for Charleston. But the storm's weaker up here. I don't want to minimize the chance of, what a Category 1 or 2 hurricane could do to South Carolina and North Carolina. But those areas get hit by a storm of that intensity about once every 4 years. The building codes are meant for storms like that to have minimal impacts. So, obviously you don't want to deal with it, school cancellations, work cancellations, power outages and stuff like that. But it wouldn't be the devastating Category 4 impacts that we were possibly looking at down in Florida a couple days ago. So that's all very positive stuff, Candace. And, we'll continue to watch it. These things shift. Some of this could start shifting back towards the coast. Yep. We're talking about the wiggle room here of about 70 to about 100 miles, which isn't a lot considering the storm is still 3 days away.
Yeah, and while all of that said, while it appears, at least at this point, that parts of Florida will be spared from a direct hit, there are parts of the Bahamas where it won't avoid that.
Yeah, I don't want to
hit.
minimize that. The people in Freeport and the northern portions of the island, I don't think NASA is going to get it too badly, but the northern islands could very well go through. When I was showing you the satellite picture, the whole bottom half of the storm has very powerful winds with it and heavy rain. The northern portions of the Bahamas right now look to go through what we call the southern portion of this storm. And yes, they could still get very significant damage from a Category 4, especially one that stalls over the top of you for, 24, 36, maybe even 48 hours.
Yeah, it's moving at 8 miles an hour right now, but it could slow down, and it is expected to hit the Bahamas.
I bet you when we get to Sunday night and Monday morning, that speed will be like 2, 3.
Less than walking speed.
Yes.
All right. Bill, thank you.